We may have some embers or some ashes, or we may have some flames coming, but we'll put them out. We'll stomp them out. We understand this now. We'll stomp them out, and we'll stomp them out very, very powerfully. So we've made a big step in our comeback. This was always going to be, 3 months ago I said to you, this is a very important period, this June period, because we're going to learn whether or not this is a very big, powerful R word, recession, or whether this is a hurricane that we recover from very quickly. We recover from in a matter of weeks or days.
On this episode of Just Informed Talk, we're going to take a look at the latest new Q posts, and we have to ask the question, is the shadow government run by Hussein and others laying siege against President Trump, trying to stall until the 2020 election and cause as much chaos as is possible? We're going to look at this very seriously and a whole bunch of other stuff that you know the fake news media will not report on. So you guys are going to want to stick around and check out that and a whole lot more. Hi, my name's Craig. Welcome to another episode of Just Informed Talk. Today we have a very special show for you, and I just want to remind everybody that if you want to stick around for the end, we do a segment called God's Grace is Greater, where we talk about God's grace and how it is truly greater. And today we're going to talk about Romans 12:21, do not be conquered by evil, but conquer evil with good. So if you guys want to stick around and hear that, I think you guys would really enjoy it. Also, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and make sure you hit the bell and select all so you get notified as soon as all of these videos get posted. We're picking up right where we left off. We left off at 44:10, picking up at 44:11, and there's a lot of information in the Q post that, first of all, you know the fake news is not going to talk about, and furthermore, really is important to understanding what's going on today. Q's giving us a lot of insights, major things going down. A lot of people are worried, and we're going to talk about what that is all about. So you guys are going to want to stick around for that and a whole lot more. But just a quick reminder, if you guys want a great product for free, you can check out the Brave internet browser. You can download it for your laptop, your desktop, or your smartphone. And if you download it, install it, and run it, it is a great product. It blocks the ads. You can get it for free using the link in the description. And when you do that, they'll make a contribution to this channel. So if you want to support the channel and get a great product, I recommend you check out the Brave browser today. So let's get into the latest Q post. The first thing I want to do, though, is go back to Q post 4406. And I want to talk about what Q pointed us back to from, 7 months ago? November of 2019. Q says, all assets, foreign and domestic, being deployed. Some who once supported POTUS sleepers will turn puppets and puppet masters. Control of narrative equals control of opinion. Control of opinion equals power. Everything is at stake. Old guard powered structure being destroyed. Washington Civil War. Control the narrative. Prevent exposure of truth. Self-preservation. Fighting for survival. Information warfare. Q. So I only point to this as we begin because you have to take everything that we're going to talk about here with a grain of salt, because a lot of it's speculation. But what Q is telling us is that there's an open insurrection. President Trump's actively trying to get his military on board with the concept of this. And there are people inside of that organization that Q's telling us about who are actively coordinating, possibly, to go against the orders of the President of the United States. And that's what Dan Bongino, we'll look at later, calls a mutiny. And it's what I call a mutiny as well. So this is serious times. This is serious information. And I just want to make it very clear that we were warned about this. So before they go, oh, well, Q's just pulling it out of the news headlines, this was a very explicit warning from Q that was given back in November of 2019 that this was what was going to be ahead. So I know it's hard for a lot of people to understand, but we have to get through this, and we have to support those who are just waking up and kind of help everyone get up to speed with where we're at. And then we just have to keep moving forward and standing for the Constitution, standing for our First Amendment rights, our Second Amendment rights, and all the other constitutionally guaranteed rights that we have as citizens to help keep our republic running as it should. That's as simple as it is. But yeah, let's start here with this Twitter post that Q wants us to look at. Honest to Gosh on Twitter giving a hat tip to QAnon saying fake news alert. And then it gives us this Business Insider article from June 2nd, 2020, which says the FBI, quote, has no intelligence, unquote, indicating Antifa was linked to weekend violence in the George Floyd protests, despite Trump and Republicans' claims. Okay, well, Business Insider, I guess, how many millions of dollars are they funded with corporate money tied to possibly some of these things happening? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. But what's interesting is when you look at the tweet, it says verse this, and it's the literal statement from the United States Attorney General, which completely contradicts what they said. And this statement was made, I believe, either the day after or the day of. But yeah, here, you can watch for yourself.
At some demonstrations, there are extremist agitators who are hijacking the protests to pursue their own separate and violent agenda. We have evidence that Antifa and other similar extremist groups, as well as actors of a variety of different political persuasions, have been involved in instigating and participating in the violent activity.
We're seeing people who are exploiting this situation to pursue violent extremist agendas, anarchists like Antifa and other agitators.
So there you saw Attorney General Barr and FBI Director Wray both saying it was Antifa, but Business Insider, they tell us there's no intelligence that exists, that they're involved. So I don't know who to believe, really. It's just, comes down to, the cognitive dissonance that they instill in us through these kind of double speak tactics, and the fact that we know there's fake news out there. We know they just put this in the headline, and then you get to the 5th paragraph and it basically states in general context what really happened. But they have to have the misleading headlines, and that's what they rely on because it misleads a lot of people. But Q says the news is fake, the war is real. Yeah, I think we know that part. The next one here is this Donald Trump Twitter post. Now, of this letter, President Trump says, I thought this letter from respected retired Marine and superstar lawyer John Dowd would be of interest to the American people. Read it. Now, this is a letter from John Dowd, as President Trump says, the retired Marine who's a superstar lawyer, right, to Jim Mattis in response to Jim Mattis's remarks about President Trump and the way he's handling the situation. Now, this has everything to do with something we're going to talk about in a few minutes here about this possible open insurrection that is coming against President Trump that he wants to use the military against, but is having pushback from individuals who work inside of the Pentagon, right? And we can go back and look at people like Jim Mattis, who John Dowd's writing to here, and look at their decisions and why they were asked to leave, why they left their positions. And there's a lot more to that than most people will understand. But a few important parts from this letter. Did you forget, this is writing to Jim Mattis, General Jim Mattis, saying, did you forget that President Bush used active duty Marines to quell the riots in LA? President Trump has countless cities and some snowflake governors and mayors wedding themselves in the use of force to protect innocent lives and property. The AG of Massachusetts thinks burning property is a good protest. 3 more policemen were stabbed and shot in NYC last night. Think about it. Should he be upset about the obvious failure of leadership? Where are you, Jim? Marines, go to the fight. No one divided this country more than Obama. He abandoned our black brothers and sisters. He gave guns to the cartels. He apologized for our precious sacrifice and generosity overseas. You remember? He fired you. President Trump has done more to help our minority brothers and sisters in 3 years than anyone in the last 50. Ask the black pastors, ask the leaders of the black colleges and universities. He got them funded. Ask them about the prison reform, which ended the draconian sentences imposed on young black men by the laws enacted by Biden and his hacks. You need to bone up on your homework and stop listening to Uncle Leon. And I think that's Leon Panetta. It says, I understand you had to stick to the assigned narrative, which did not include 3 years of corrupt investigations, evidence to destroy this president, his office, and his lawful free election. Nancy has no tolerance for dissent in the ranks, including those with stars. Oh, Nancy Pelosi controls him. It It says, you said nothing of the ugly, hate-filled, disgraceful comments of Pelosi, Schumer, Perez, and other Democrats, hacks defaming the president and his office. You said nothing of the unlawful sanctuary cities and the unlawful releases of hoodlums. You said nothing of the resistance movement to paralyze our courts and our government operations. You said nothing about the obstruction and subversion of our immigration laws. You said nothing of MS-13 killers and the drug cartels who own huge sections of our major cities. Jim, do you think that hateful rhetoric and those corrupt actions were inspiring and unifying? Do you think that the drill instructors at Paris Island would find such behavior as unifying? Maybe your problem is a lot deeper. Perhaps you ought to explain how and why you and John Allen, as CG Central Command, did not engage and take out Iranian Major General Soleimani, who roamed the Middle East and wreaked havoc and death on our American boys with his infamous IEDs. Why did it take President Trump to have the instincts and balls to take him out? Of course, over the objection of the geniuses at the Pentagon. Looks like the Persian mullahs were a one-horse sleigh and Trump nailed the horse forever. It has been quiet ever since. Perhaps your anger is born of embarrassment for your own failure as the leader of Central Command. Do you applaud when the president recognized the central problem in the Middle East? Did you applaud the president when he wanted to save American lives by bringing them home in one piece? John Dowd. Wow. Yeah, that's an incredible letter. Worth reading in its, the other parts, but you can check it out. I'll leave a link to it. And Q just says, we are fighting for our survival. Q. Yeah, that's what we're up against here. People who are embarrassed, people who are acting against what's best for this country, it seems, at the moment. But the next thing here, Q gives us the American flag, gives us this link to this Axios article from December of 2019, talking about Ambassador Kadenow becoming the 5th Pentagon official to resign in 7 days. Now, this goes right back to what I talked about before here, 4406, Q reminding us from November of 2019 that all assets, foreign and domestic, were being deployed. Some who once supported POTUS sleepers will turn puppets and puppet masters. And then shortly after, we had all of these Pentagon officials moving out of their offices in the Pentagon because President Trump has still been cleaning house to this day. And that's what a lot of this is all about, ultimately, in my opinion. And of course, the next thing that Q points us to is this Twitter post where we have to listen to what Dan Bongino tells us. You got to listen to these words.
The president had every right to talk about the Insurrection Act in the U.S. military. What I'm hearing from people is that there are some military brass. This is uncomfortable for me to talk about, but you need to hear it because you need to be warned. And some civilian representatives of the military, undersecretary types and others, who are organizing together and talking about how they're going to either talk the president out of or just simply not obey his orders if the president, God forbid, and again, as I said, it would be a very bad idea now, but if we were to lose an American city using the U.S. military, think about what I just told you. Folks, I've been doing this now. This is episode 1266. Joe's been there with me from episode 1. My wife's been married to me from episode 1. I don't think I've ever told you something as serious as what I just told you. These are not second-rate garbage sources. These are legitimate, real people who are genuinely concerned that some upper-level people in our military are openly talking about defying the President of the United States. That's got a name. That's called a mutiny. What is this, Venezuela? You don't like the president's decisions about his constitutional authority to use our military to suppress an emergency situation? Then there's a solution for that. It's called an election. It'll be here in November. Not here to tell you who to vote for. You know who I'm voting for. I've been a supporter of the president, and I'll continue to. My vote's not a secret. I'm not telling you who to vote for. But the mere suggestion that the President of the United States is no longer the commander-in-chief and some band of military insiders is somehow...
So there you saw it for yourself. Dan Bongino saying that his sources are telling him and genuinely concerned that some upper level people in our military are openly talking about defying the President of the United States. And I'm hearing something very similar from my sources too. So if they are going to think about doing that, they need to rethink their action. They need to understand that this is not some banana republic. We don't live in it. We're trying to restore justice and law and order in our country. We can't have generals undermining the President of the United States or whoever in the Pentagon trying to form a mutiny against him. Especially as cities burn across this country, we have organized terrorist action coming at us from every angle, extreme acts of random violence being committed across the board, and all during a pandemic, which now seems to be coming back because you have thousands and thousands and thousands of people marching through the streets, not social distancing. And isn't that just a right place for our enemies to plant the seeds of destruction, whether it's ideological with this socialism and this communist ideology of, regressivism, or if it's actually through the seeds of destruction which come in the form of a plague that was set out from China, which we've already identified and has had incredibly devastating effects on our economy. I mean, at what point do you wake up and go, this is something very serious? Q says, those loyal to our constitutional republic and our command structure, those loyal to the office of the president and the will of the people, those who swore an oath to protect and defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic, those good people who serve proudly for America, Castle Rock, for God and country, Q. So obviously Q is telling us that there are people out there who are still loyal to the president. They're still loyal to the constitutional republic and its command structure. And I hope that those people stand up and are louder and are more effective than the feckless weaklings who want to try to overthrow the president of the United States and undermine the work that we've done as patriots from day one of President Trump's administration to reinstill a single tier legal system in this country where we have one justice that's for all, right? And a nation under God. So that is something that I think we need to remind ourselves of regularly. Castle Rock, somebody told me, either means something to do with the Secret Service securing the White House or possibly an off-site bunker that's associated with the White House. Not sure about that. You guys have to let me know down in the comments. And the next one here says, EAM loyalists. I think this means emergency action message loyalists. Red 1, POTUS Twitter removal. Now, we've seen what they've done to President Trump on Twitter. They've censored his speech. They're starting to go after his posts. They're starting to remove the content that he's putting on there. And then they're removing the accounts that he retweets. So we know Twitter is trying to shut down the leader of the free world. Then it says Red 2. And I think these are alerts. These are, whatever you want to look at them as, they're different alerts as to how serious the situation is, right? And or this is what is going to happen in sequence if they remove President Trump from Twitter, and then we have to go through this kind of martial law, this insurrection act. But first, they'll remove President Trump from Twitter. Then there'll be a central communications blackout across the United States. And my friends, people I'm hearing from, sources, seem to say that in that period, it would be very likely for President Trump to get on Marine One, the helicopter, say, my fellow Americans, the storm is upon us, get into Air Force One, and not be seen again for days, maybe weeks, because Air Force One's going to stay in the air until they take care of this actual insurrection, which is being mounted against President Trump. Then it says Red 3, classified movement Pelosi or Pence. So if they start moving Pelosi or Pence, that means they're preserving the continuity of government chain of command. Then Red 4 would be the movement of military assets, the 10th Mountain Division, 1st Marine Corps Marines into central locations under the guise of citizen riot control. Then the National Military Command Center would be effectively operational. And then you would have the Secretary of Defense instructing, and the United States Secret Service would be ensuring that President Trump is secure in the White House or in an off-site bunker associated with the White House. Q. That might be a sequence of events. That might be a set of markers that could tell you when this is getting serious. I'm not sure, but I can tell you right now that whatever's happening, Q wants us to look at the fact that there is an insurrection that is happening and that President Trump is being opposed from inside the military that could be perceived as some kind of mutiny. That's what we can tell from what we've seen on these posts so far, right? Now let's look at the next few posts. We have this Atlantic article talking about James Mattis denouncing President Trump, describing him as a threat to the Constitution. Oh, well, that's interesting. Former general telling us that the President of the United States is a threat to the Constitution. I never thought I'd live to see it, but here we are. The next post and you can read through the articles if you want. The next post Q gives us is this militarytimes.com article talking about senior military leaders being called to testify to Congress about George Floyd protest response. So more blockade, more stall tactics, bring in the generals, bring in the senior military leaders, have them stand up on Congress and do your little dog and pony show so that, you can just stall until the 2020 election. That's the way I read that. And who knows if these leaders are going to be like James Mattis and come in and just guns blazing out for Trump, metaphorically speaking. I don't know. The next one here is this Washington Examiner article talking about the Pentagon distancing itself from Trump on crowd control and laments murder of George Floyd. Who in the Pentagon? Oh, Mark Esper, the Secretary of Defense. Well, that's interesting. It's very fascinating to see what happens. But again, like I said before, if you guys have a different read on all this, which there are a few ways to read this, let me know down in the comments as well. But Q wants us to look at that. And then finally, they want us to look at this Washington Post article, which actually talks about the revolt of the generals. And this is from June 4th, 2020, saying we do not yet know precisely why Defense Secretary Mark T. Esper publicly broke with President Trump on Wednesday, renouncing the use of the Insurrection Act as a means to deploy the military against civilian demonstrators. We can surmise, however, that Pentagon brass was finally fed up and prevailed upon Esper to speak out. Now, let me ask and think out loud here. Could the plan have been, right, to let rioters break through the gates of the White House and storm the White House physically, to embarrass President Trump, to threaten President Trump, to actually enact a physical coup, to remove him from office by force? I don't know. I highly doubt they would have gotten very far with Secret Service, but I can tell you right now that this was the intended goal of those riots, at least, that happened previously. So, I just thought that was interesting. Q points us to it, then says, riot coordination in select safe zone cities, control mayors, allow staged event, allow former active military brass assertion of unconstitutional threat to Constitution mutiny, mainstream media public optics staging underway, alert readiness, severe critical. Q. So President Trump, I think, is under siege right now. I think what's happening is we have top brass in the military who are trying to enact a mutiny against our president, and we have this mainstream media covering for them and helping to set the stage for it. I think they're going to try to silence anybody who talks about this, and I don't care that they are going to come after all of us, because we will not relent. We will always talk about the truth. We will always exercise our freedom of speech, and we will always exercise all of our rights, and that includes the right to have a constitutional republic that has a president who is elected by we the people, and we stand for that president no matter what. So whatever's happening here, we are going to continue to monitor it. We're going to continue to cover it. We're going to bring it here to the people every single day, no matter what happens. President Trump has a plan. I know that. I know there are good people around him who are going to make sure that nothing happens, but I also know that the threat of these monsters, right? Especially the sleepers, the ones that we haven't seen arise yet or slowly are starting to show themselves. That's what we have to be careful of. And you have to look at the Democrat mayors. You got to look at what's happening across the country. And we have to do what we can do. The one thing we can do, I know, more than anything else, is pray. Put God first, because God is going to help us win this battle. But yeah, I'll leave that for you guys. The next one here is this Fox News article talking about the Minneapolis City Council President, Democrat Jeremiah Ellison, claim they'll dismantle the police. Oh, yes, this is Keith Ellison's son, the city council member from Minnesota here, or Minneapolis, who wants to dismantle the police. Great, good idea. I pray for the people of Minneapolis that these socialists, these fascist, communists, whatever you want to call them, the hybrid fusion of all that, I hope that they never succeed in dismantling the police, because it will only hurt the community at large, and it will only cause more pain, more violence, more chaos. But then again, that's what these people need, because they are criminals who are covering for criminals. Look at Keith Ellison tacitly endorsing the Antifa handbook, which has now been deemed a terrorist organization. This guy's father is the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota. And he's overseeing the case right now with George Floyd, which just happens to be causing violent terrorist extremism across the country, which is being organized through Antifa. But, you know, don't tie any of those things together. It's all completely unrelated, I'm sure. These people are sick. Infiltration instead of invasion? Yes, this is their plan to destroy us from within, and they're enacting it in real time. Wake up, people. But I know most of you already know that. The next one here Q gives us is this, or this is another thing I want to talk about with Keith Ellison, just real briefly. James Woods on Twitter said this: Keith Ellison will time the trial for the month before the election, October surprise. Regardless of the verdict, the rioting will be timed just before the election day to intimidate the elderly from going to the polls. Mail-in voting will be instituted due to civil unrest. This is terrorism. This is a violation of the rights of the people. It is exactly what you don't want, voter intimidation. And that's, if James Woods is hypothetically correct in the way this is going to play out, that is voter intimidation. That is voter suppression in the realest sense, not in some contrived, you know, if you force somebody to have a license, it's suppressing their right to vote type of way. I'm talking about in like the actual going to the ballot boxes with violent mobs backed by terrorists who commit random acts of violence. That's voter intimidation, ladies and gentlemen. Is that the world you want to live in? Is that the world you want to live in? I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. At what point, you know? But the next post Q wants us to look at is this post right here, Carluska P on Twitter, Carly Q saying, watch this with the sound on.
Is that the nation is panicking. 71% of us want the National Guard in our cities tonight. 58% of us want the military in our cities tonight. All right, the people are panicking. The country is on fire. Now, who is attacking us? Mr. Esper should know this. Right. It's Antifa, Department of Justice, NYPD. Others are saying this very clearly. These are people, by the way, that we faced back in the 1960s and 70s and early 80s. These were people who were far leftist, Marx, Lenin, folks who embraced that ideology. They allied with Black Panther movements, and it took many years to finally put it down. Very dangerous. And now this same group, who is allied, by the way, with the Democratic Socialists, we're talking to Bernie Bros and Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, they're back. They're back with firebombs. They're back with bricks in our suburbs and our downtowns. That's something that Mr. Esper clearly doesn't understand. And then finally, we have a media that is feeding this flame, this horrific fire, this seditiousness. You have brought this up many times, including tonight. Let me read a headline from Slate magazine. Just yesterday, it said the following: peaceful protests are an important tool, but so is violence. So now we have a media filling the airways full of this crap. Yeah. Put it all together. And the piece that you mentioned, no more police, because we're going to defund those folks. We can't put forward the National Guard because that would be escalation. So now we take off the military from the table. What does that leave, Tucker? Let me tell you what it leaves. Vigilante justice. That's exactly. It's you and me and everybody watching this program arming ourselves. Is that how we run a republic? No, sir, it is not. And you do not want a country that goes there. And that is precisely where the nation is headed. And we need for all of our leadership to understand that. And if Secretary Esper doesn't get it, doesn't understand that the oath is to protect ourselves from threats, both foreign and domestic, by God, get the hell out of the Pentagon and let somebody lead who gets it. Because that is the oath that he took, that I took, and that the people of this country demand of our leadership in this moment, because we are on fire. Someone do something about it.
So there you heard it. Brian Dean, right? I think speaking for a lot of us out there, it says, Q says, remember your oath. Remember why you joined. It's about the person standing next to you, Q. Yeah. Interesting words. The next thing here is Dan Scavino's post that Q wants us to look at, which actually shows this incredible lightning strike in downtown Washington, D.C., right at the Capitol. You can see the Washington Monument there in the middle where it gets struck. And it's a pretty powerful strike of lightning. And Q pointing us to this specific post from Dan Scavino saying tonight in D.C. via at WUSA 9. So, yeah. Obviously, something to be pointed to from Q, where Q says biblical, and yeah, major things happening in D.C. Then, and Anon says, "What in the what is that?" And referring to the post from Dan Scavino, and it says, "I've never seen lightning do that before," and it's a screenshot of that lightning burst that seems to show this orb around the lightning, which is really incredible, right? And Q says, "Have faith." Q. I'm not sure what to make of that. If you guys have any ideas, please let me know down below. The next post Q wants us to look at is this Mike Lee post, Senator Mike Lee talking about, just heard that Mayor Bowser is kicking the Utah National Guard out of all D.C. hotels tomorrow. More than 1,200 troops from 10 states are being evicted. This is unacceptable. Yeah, I mean, think about it. What they're doing right now is they're trying to get to make D.C. vulnerable because they want violence. They want the appearance of destruction in D.C. because then it affirms all of the things that they've said about these protesters and how great they are and how powerful they are, right? Because then they will be the conquerors and they can be, gloated about on CNN and MSDNC of how great they are and how effective they are at getting their voices heard. When in reality, it's just a bunch of violent extremist thugs who have infiltrated what is I'd say a reasonably sized peaceful protest, right? To the degree that they're not out burning things down. That's just being subverted every single time they go out. So it's the perfect agitation move. It's the perfect way to wage war and to sow the seeds of division and pit us against each other, right? But we have to be bigger than that and we have to see through it, which is exactly what's happening. And Q asks us to see what's happening, saying, do you see what's happening both times? Yes, we do. The next post here is this Catherine Herridge tweet saying, change we can believe in. Q. Now, what is this referring to? It's referring to Catherine Herridge on Twitter here, talking about Republican-led Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee authorizing Senator Ron Johnson to issue subpoenas in FBI Crossfire Hurricane, State Department contact author dossier, and unmasking by former government officials plus 30 names read. And it actually is following the pen, as Q would say, Crossfire Hurricane. They're issuing subpoenas. They're bringing in all of the people that we've been talking about here on the boards. Baker, Brennan, Blumenthal, Clapper, Kleinsmith, Comey, all those guys, right? Priestep, Lisa Page, Peter Strzok, the rest, bringing them all in to face a subpoena and questioning against their choices to do the unmasking, right? To produce this investigation against the President of the United States and how they went about conducting Crossfire Hurricane and what was happening there. So we're going to get to the bottom of it, but that's why they're creating chaos. That's why they've activated all of these sleeper cells to go against the United States because they're actively trying to destroy us from within, but we already know that. Anon says, Q, are Herridge's pen positions comms? Q says, follow the pen. Have you not been following Q? Yeah, okay. Well, we got that part. The next post here that Q wants us to look at is this Bard's tweet, which actually is a letter from General Flynn. All right, Bard's on Twitter here, Bard's FM, saying, if the United States wants to survive, this is from Lieutenant General Michael Flynn to Scott Kesterson, saying, if the United States wants to survive and the onslaught of socialism, if we are to continue to enjoy self-government, to secure the God-given individual blessing of liberty for ourselves, for our families, then good Americans must accept that each has a moral obligation to participate in the political life of our country. The art and exercise of self-governance requires active participation. Voting matters, but it is only a part-time engagement of the American citizenry and doesn't go far enough if we are to survive as a constitutional republic. I want to see more of our veteran and law enforcement communities becoming involved in the political life of America. We are a participatory experiment in governing. Without a greater commitment, We will continue our slide into the abyss of socialism, and we must not be intimidated by the smear campaigns that will most certainly come with greater and more active participation. We will only keep America if we dedicate ourselves to freedom's victory over the socialist monster by our good citizens accepting greater responsibility. I am not done. God bless, Mike. Yeah, thank you, General Flynn. And the fact that he is not done means that we have much bigger things ahead. Q says, what happens when the gag order is lifted? Case dismissed. Quote, I am not done, unquote. Be all you can be. Army strong. They knew they could not destroy America through invasion. Infiltration at the highest levels of government, media, science, health, military, chain of command, final level Q. That's where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. They have infiltrated at the highest levels, and we are strategically minimizing each threat one by one and trying to restore this great constitutional republic. Mark my words, we will succeed. The next post here Q wants us to look at is this Twitter post from Arthur Schwartz saying, a CNN person with direct knowledge says Anderson Cooper has been planning a town hall for months with Gary Cohn, Jim Mattis, John Kelly, and McMaster to air in September. They will make stuff up and say that Trump is unfit for office. Mattis and Kelly signed on, Cohn and HR on the fence. Well, I love that we just scooped CNN and exposed them for what they're going to be doing in September as a hit piece against President Trump, getting these generals together, these deep state generals together to talk about President Trump and Gary Cohn along with them. So, yeah, there you go. Guess we blew the lid on that one. Q says, full MSDNC blitzkrieg, known and ready, October surprise being prepped and warmed. Q. That means that we're ready and we're going to have some sort of response, which should be fascinating to see. And then finally, Q says here, important to understand MSDNC plus social media projection, we are the minority, is false. We are the majority and growing every second of the day. MSDNC plus social media projection, we are divided, is false. We are united and only getting stronger. People are awake and see what is happening. Patriots have no skin color. Humanity is good. Q. And I couldn't agree more. Don't let them fool you. We are stronger than they lead us on to believe, and that's why they're so terrified of us. But that's where we're gonna go ahead and leave it. A few more things. If you want to help out, you can watch these videos, share them on your social media. Also, leave your thoughts, theories, and insights below in the comments. I want to hear what you guys have to think about everything that we talked about today. A few other ways you can connect with me outside of YouTube on social media here is at JustInformYou on Twitter and at informed_news, even though, we see the suppression over there with those platforms. But that's why I'm also on Parler, and that's at JustInformedTalk. And I'm over here on BitChute. BitChute.com/JustInformedTalk is the official channel. And I have JustInformedNews.com, the official website for Just Informed Talk. Come over here and check it out. A lot of great links and information that you can check out as well. If you guys want to help out this channel and help create content, you can via a financial donation here on Patreon, patreon.com. It's a crowdfunding website, monthly donation. Your support keeps this channel alive and running. Thank you to everybody who does that. That's how I'm able to do this in the face of all the demonetization and active efforts to put this channel out of business. Your support keeps it going. I also have a GoFundMe set up if you want to make a one-time or anonymous donation. Like I said, links to everything will be in the description below. Now, before we go, we do a segment at the end of each one of these episodes called God's Grace is Greater, where we talk about God's grace and how it is truly greater. And I told you at the beginning of the episode, we're going to be covering Romans chapter 12. But we're going to cover more than just verse 21. We're going to talk about verse 9 through 21. And it talks about what ethically Christians should look at the world as and what kind of views we should hope to have in dealing with such evil. And I'll let the words speak for themselves. I'll share. It says, love must be without hypocrisy. Detest evil. Cling to what is good. Show family affection to one another with brotherly love. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not lack diligence. Be fervent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in affliction. Be persistent in prayer. Share with the saints in their needs. Pursue hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Be in agreement with one another. Do not be proud. Instead, associate with the humble. Do not be wise in your own estimation. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Try to do what is honorable in everyone's eyes. If possible, on your part, live at peace with everyone. Friends, do not avenge yourselves. Instead, leave room for his wrath. For it is written, 'Vengeance belongs to me. I will repay,' says the Lord. But if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. For in doing so, you will be heaping fiery coals on his head. Do not be conquered by evil, but conquer evil with good." And that's the point, I think. See, it tells us here how to live, and how to live with righteousness and integrity. By rejoicing in hope, being patient in affliction, persistent in prayer, sharing with the saints in their needs, pursuing hospitality, blessing those who persecute you. But ultimately what it tells us is that vengeance belongs to the Lord. And that when our enemies are hungry, we should feed them. And if they're thirsty, we should give them a drink, because we can never conquer evil with evil. We must conquer it with good. And that's my message to each and every one of you out there. Remember that, share that with your family, friends, and loved ones. And you can open up your heart to God with a simple prayer and just start that line of communication so that you can change the world by living for what's good. And that's my message to you. I want you guys to take it, share it. Also, you can come here, hit the button if you guys haven't, the subscribe button, and also hit it, punch it, headbutt it, tap it, whatever. Bop it, twist it, turn it, hit the like button if you guys like this content and want to see me make more. That's it for me, though. Thanks for watching this episode of Just Informed Talk. My name is Craig. Godspeed, and God bless each and every one of you, Patriots.